The moment Daniel saw the photograph slip from his wallet and flutter to the rain-soaked pavement, he knew his carefully constructed life was about to unravel. It was a picture of Elena, taken 15 years ago on the day they met at the harbor, her dark hair wild in the sea breeze, her smile so bright it seemed to hold all the light in the world. He had carried it through 3 continents, 4 failed businesses, and a descent into poverty that had stripped him of everything except this one fragile piece of paper, and the gnawing ache of regret that never left his chest. As he bent down to retrieve it, his knees cracking against the cold concrete, he made a decision that would cost him everything he had left. He would find her again, no matter what it took. If you believe in the power of second chances, in the redemption that love can bring even to the most broken souls, please like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring more stories of hope and healing to those who need them most. Daniel had been a successful architect once, designing buildings that reached toward the sky with the same ambition that had driven every choice in his young life. He had met Elena at a charity event by the water, where she was volunteering to serve food to families who had lost everything in a flood. She worked as a social worker, dedicating her life to helping others rebuild what disasters had torn down. They fell in love quickly, intensely, with the kind of passion that makes the world feel both infinite and impossibly small. She wanted him to slow down, to appreciate the moments they had together, to consider starting a family. He wanted to conquer the world first, to build an empire worthy of her, to prove himself before settling into the quiet rhythms of domestic life. The arguments started small but grew like cracks in a foundation. He took a massive business opportunity overseas, promising it would only be for 6 months. 6 months became a year, then 2. He missed her birthday, then their anniversary, then the quiet desperation in her voice during their increasingly rare phone calls. When he finally returned, flushed with success and ready to start their life together, he found her apartment empty. She had left a single note on the kitchen counter, written in her careful handwriting. "I cannot wait forever for someone who is never truly here. I hope you find what you're looking for. I will always love the man you were." There was no forwarding address, no phone number, no trail to follow. She had vanished completely, as if the universe had swallowed her whole as punishment for his neglect. He threw himself into his work with manic energy, trying to drown the loss in concrete and steel. For a while it worked. His firm expanded, his reputation grew, and people spoke his name with respect. But the foundation was rotten. He made reckless investments trying to build something monumental enough to fill the void she left behind. He trusted the wrong partners, signed contracts without reading them, and ignored warning signs that would have been obvious to anyone not blinded by grief and desperation. The collapse came suddenly and completely. Within 18 months he lost everything: his company, his savings, his reputation. He became one of the invisible people he used to walk past without seeing, sleeping in shelters, eating at soup kitchens, carrying his entire world in a torn backpack. During those years of wandering, he searched for her. Between odd jobs and temporary work, he would visit social service agencies hoping someone might remember her or know where she had gone. He checked old professional registries, called mutual friends who had long since stopped returning his messages, and spent hours in public libraries using free internet to search through social media profiles. He found nothing. It was as if she had erased herself from existence, or perhaps the world had erased him from hers. The photograph became his talisman, the only proof that she had been real, that their love had existed in something more than his increasingly unreliable memory. The turning point came on a Tuesday morning in November. Daniel was working at a community center, mopping floors in exchange for meals, when he overheard 2 women talking about a documentary film screening. One mentioned that a local social worker had been featured in the film, discussing her work rebuilding communities after natural disasters. The woman's name was Elena Morrison. His Elena had been Elena Santos, but she could have married, could have changed her name for 1,000 different reasons. He felt his heart hammer against his ribs as he asked them for details, his voice shaking so badly they looked at him with concern. The screening was in 3 days at a small theater downtown. Daniel had no money for the ticket, but he showed up anyway, waiting outside in the cold November rain, hoping to catch a glimpse through the doors when they opened. A young volunteer taking tickets noticed him shivering and, in a moment of kindness that Daniel would never forget, slipped him inside. He sat in the back row, his wet clothes leaving a puddle on the floor, and watched the screen with an intensity that made his eyes burn. Then she appeared. Older, her hair shorter and streaked with gray, wearing glasses he didn't remember, but unmistakably her. She spoke about her work in developing countries, about helping communities rebuild after earthquakes and floods, about how she had dedicated her life to being present for people when they needed someone most. The camera captured her hands as she helped an elderly woman sort through the rubble of her destroyed home. The same gentle patience he remembered from when she would tend to his cuts after he insisted on helping with construction sites himself. The documentary explained that she had spent the last decade overseas, returning to the city only recently to lead a new nonprofit focused on disaster preparedness. The film listed the organization's address at the end of the credits. Daniel memorized it, repeating it silently like a prayer as the audience filed out. He spent the next week cleaning himself up as best he could. He found a barber school that needed practice clients and got his first real haircut in months. He washed his clothes 3 times at a laundromat, scrubbing until his hands were raw. He practiced what he would say, then decided words would fail him, and he should simply show up and hope she would. See past what he had become to the man who had loved her with every broken piece of his soul. The nonprofit occupied a small office in a converted warehouse. Through the window he could see her at a desk, reviewing papers, occasionally pushing her glasses up with one finger in a gesture so familiar it made his chest ache. He stood outside for nearly an hour, paralyzed by fear. What if she had moved on completely? What if she was happy and he was about to drag all their old pain back into her carefully rebuilt life? What if she looked at him with pity, or worse, with the blank indifference reserved for strangers? He was about to turn away when she looked up and their eyes met through the glass. Time collapsed. He saw recognition flash across her face, followed by shock, then something he couldn't quite read. She stood up slowly, her chair rolling back, her hand coming to her mouth. They stared at each other across the barrier of glass and years and accumulated regrets. Then she moved toward the door. When she opened it, she didn't speak immediately. She studied his face, taking in the lines that hardship had carved there. The gray in his hair, the weight he had lost. He wanted to explain everything, to apologize for all of it, to tell her about the searching and the losing and the photograph he had carried like a promise. Instead, he found himself saying only, "I'm sorry I was never there. I'm here now." If this story is touching your heart, please take a moment to comment below with the word "believe" so we can see how many of you are feeling this journey with Daniel and Elena. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a terrible moment he thought she might close the door. Then she said something that would stay with him forever. "I know. I've been looking for you too." She explained that after moving overseas she had tried to find him, only to discover that his company had collapsed and he had disappeared. She had hired investigators who found nothing. She had returned to the city partially in hopes that their paths might cross again, that the universe might grant them the second chance neither felt they deserved. They didn't embrace immediately. The moment was too fragile, too weighted with the ghosts of who they had been and the years they had lost. Instead, they sat together on a bench outside her office as the afternoon light faded, and they began the slow, painful, beautiful work of telling each other their stories. She learned about his fall and his years of wandering. He learned about her work abroad, about the marriage that had ended after 2 years when she realized she was still in love with a ghost, about her return home with a heart that had never stopped carrying a photograph of its own. They didn't promise forever that day, because they had learned that forever is built from 1,000 present moments, each one chosen deliberately and held carefully. Instead, they promised tomorrow. She helped him find housing through her nonprofit's connections. He began volunteering with her organization, discovering that his architectural skills could be transformed into designing emergency shelters and sustainable rebuilding plans. Slowly, carefully, they rebuilt not just their own lives, but something new between them. A love that had survived everything it took to break them, and had somehow emerged stronger for all the breaking. On the anniversary of that November day, Daniel stood in the office that had become partially his, working on designs for a community center in a flood-ravaged town. Elena came up behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her head against his back. In his wallet, he still carried that photograph from 15 years ago, but next to it now was a new one. The two of them at the groundbreaking ceremony for their first completed project, both wearing hard hats, both smiling with the hard-won joy of people who had lost everything, and found that the only thing they truly needed had been waiting all along. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that it's never too late for redemption, and that love can survive even our worst mistakes, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Your engagement helps us reach more hearts. Thank you for being here.